It's November 23rd, 2021. My pattern has been taken down. This ball is not of any significance or relevance, neither is the stuff on this, whatever. These are, at this point, just props of somebody else's design, I suppose. I don't even know. I just made a collage, but it's a vintage collage that are facts according to my life frame of my human experience while I've been trapped here in New York, away from Nicholas. When I arrived, my grandfather, who served a war deep in the heart of Europe, and was trained there, and then came to America, secured employment, and came a respectable way with his family by ship and by agreement. He arrived, I believe, somewhere in the 1950s with his family. He had come here earlier to secure the employment. However that works, I don't know. He never spoke of it. It is not for little girls to know how men conduct their business. I never asked more than that. So his telephone in Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, where he bought the house that I am now transmitting from in Quantum Mirror State, in the telekinesis, telephonica, whatever. He, on his behalf, I'm just documenting a continuation after his life ended and mine still remained here, whatever a life means to somebody, in Lifelive, since he spoke a different language based on a different set that I was taught. So he had a telephone through the local municipality or principality, however that worked. When I arrived, he had the one that was the circle with little circles. There's no need to know cipher or legend of it. I already know what it was. Then Linda and Lou had a different phone. Theirs did not have a circle with a dial. Theirs was something with push buttons. It was an ivory color, off-white ivory color, cream perhaps, with gray buttons. They call that push button in vintage. That was while we lived in Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361. When we moved to Suffolk County on the border of Nassau, to Cold Spring Harbor, Linda received a wall phone with push buttons. I don't remember the details, but it's within my life frame. And it hung on the kitchen wall overlooking the woods and the deck from the kitchen. There were wooden Anderson windows. It was almost a bay window, I think is what they call it. A bay look to it. But there was no water close to where we were, and I lived up on a hill. Lewis used to call it the tree house. It was like a yellow box, is what it looked like. If you took like matchsticks and you just wanted to make a diorama of some sort, you could just take the Douglas fir from the matchsticks, light eggshell yellow, like very pale, would be what the outside looked like with white trim. But that was the only phone, and it was corded. It had a cord, just like Rotary had a cord. The push button had a cord, and then the slender, I think somewhere they called it a princess phone, but I don't want to get into Telefonica details. I also read that it was trimline. I never heard it called that. It was just the kitchen wall phone as far as I knew. And she had a longer cord for that, for privacy. Not that we really got many phone calls, but I could walk a distance with the receiver from the wall. This was in the 1980s to 1990s. This is what life looked like for me, which is drastically different than where humans took a turn for in a really dangerous set of events that currently are really harming me in many ways. And then there was something called a payphone. In Lloyd Harbor Elementary, we did not have a payphone accessible to us at all. We would enter the building, go to our classroom, sit there, listen to the teacher, and then we would leave. Well, I would leave by bus to go, yellow bus, the long yellow bus to go home. It was public school. Then after 6th grade, they moved us 7th and 8th. 7th grade is when I met the swim team and swim coach for the first time, and for the only time that it was allowed for us. And that 7th grade, that it was Cold Spring Harbor Junior High and high school attached. So 7th and 8th had its own hallway, and then 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th had its own section. And then the seniors had like a step down cafeteria portion. They got to paint a wall. It was like a big thing in ridiculousness, but that was our whatever, our local piece of history. And in that school, there was one payphone, but you had to put quarters in it. It was free to receive a phone call, but like nobody really knew their whatever. But you had to put quarters in order to dial out. Like if I left my whatever at home, I needed to call Linda and Lou at work if I wasn't feeling well, that kind of thing. But no, the kids didn't really use it a lot. It was just there for whatever. Now, in 1980 something, Mark King was in 2nd grade, Miss Craigler's class with me, and then left suddenly. I don't know why. Really upset me. And then all of a sudden it was like, I woke up one morning and he was totally gone from my ability to be sad about it. It was like he was totally gone. And I remember Yasmin, I don't remember her last name, we were in this computer lab, like this little closet, pushing buttons to put things on a screen. Dumbest class they ever created. And she said that her family was friendly, or had heard from Mark that wherever he went, he was safe. I had no idea what that meant, but I thanked her. I didn't even know who she was talking about. I couldn't remember who she was talking about. And then I was embarrassed by it, because she said, oh, I thought that you were, whatever. So then 3rd grade, that was the year after, Miss R. Vans came in, and she was strict teacher, and she was really gonna push us that year, I heard, and I was really frightened because like it sounded like a lot of scary talk coming from Lou and Lynn, or coming from Linda anyway, about what the moms had said about Miss Arvan's. But I just sat there, big eyed and quiet, and just was waiting for instructions. And that's how I sat there the whole year. And when she asked for feedback, we gave feedback. She had a fashion show. The elementary school wound up putting on. They wound up getting fashion pieces from the Smithsonian, which again, I had never heard these words. I don't even really still today know where these places are. But they had asked for special permission, and we did a vintage VINTAGE fashion show. The parents had some connection with some organization, so they had these special art, like fashion pieces, flown in. It was a or shipped over. It was a very special event. For some reason, I don't think my parents attended. I think they were out doing chores. I don't, whatever. But I was allowed to participate in it. There was a big thing. I had to go to the beauty salon. I had to get my hair done in a vintage. They put makeup on me. So I just followed along as usual. And I was wearing a 1920s or 30s vintage bathing suit for that. The day of the fashion show, though, we were inside, even though I was only in third grade, we were inside a building which was the seventh grade entry into that school system, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th. On that day, in that particular junior high, Nicholas showed up. There were pictures taken of he and we walked down the hallway towards the payphone, and then we walked back. I wasn't really clear as to what or why we were doing whatever it was that we were doing. But in hindsight and retrospect, now that I'm stuck in this really dangerous position in New York, it makes sense that we visually inspected the telephone, the one telephone that the public children had access to in the one building, that we would be attending school in from 7th to 12th. However, I wound up 9th and 10th going to a separate school, and then transferring back in 11th. There was a disruption there. I wound up going to Oyster Bay near the Roosevelt Estate in St. Dominic's. But I still have the memory of, at this point I can access it, I don't always have access to it, of us walking down the terrazzo floor corridor with the walls of glass on either side, one to a courtyard and one looking out towards the sports fields or the tennis courts, walking down towards the payphone. I don't have a copy of the photo that was taken. It was somebody, these weren't my parents, and I don't have family other than my mom and dad, was all Americans, or the North Americans taught me, or the people in Suffolk and Queens taught me were my family. My one set of aunts and uncles, which are Linda's brothers and sisters, and then Lewis's two half-sisters. That's the only thing that they refer to as family. Not sure if the rest of the world works differently, but so what I did was I took the 4 different types of phones over the decades, because it used to be when you were issued a telephone line, you were issued a telephone made for that telephone line. It has gotten more complicated in Telefonica, and it has become different. It's become dangerous. My inside electrolytes They call the inside energy, the spiritual inside energy of your body, electrolytes in North America when they teach medical anything. They say that if your electrolytes are off, your pH, your alkalinity, that kind of thing, for speech. But outside, there's electricity in the atmosphere, the weather pattern, the climate. Sometimes the electrolytes and the electricity work in a manner that doesn't work at all. And that's why it was really important back in the Graham and the Bell days of Telefonica, before it became such a loose organization through different problems. Too much looseness, not enough tightening of the belt. But it's now a problem between the electrolytes. Then they have a commercial on the television. Linda commandeers it. I mean, it's hers during the, whatever. She allows me to borrow her access to the television for documentation purposes. So they're running a commercial now, which I'll try to get later if I gain access to the television. Again, I don't have it. It's not something that I will have constant access to. Yeah, I'm in a shared residence. It's a different lifestyle. Even though it's a private residence, it's shared with Linda and Lou, so it's a different relationship. But they have a commercial for shingles, Shingles, where they show the body and they show pieces of the body, skin ripping off, and the inside cage. And then they show a rash that looks very similar to this, an electric rash, where the skin just flays off. And then they show electric, like unconditioned electricity, like volts of electricity, or bolts, BOLTS or VOLTS, just statically and whatever, charging the air. So in the visual spectrum where they can see it, not in the dark matter realm, but in whatever the forefront to dark matter is, whatever the forerunner is to dark matter. I don't know what they call that, if they give it a label. But they make this artistic impression, so this way the humans have some visual recognition of the science principle and the acknowledgement of it's real and it's happening and it's a danger. Who actually is awoke enough or connected enough, I'm not sure, to cognitively get it, because there's a lot of cognitive dissonance, but I don't know, there's also not a lot of ordinance that is spoken about or taught in a manner where humans can connect with it, protect themselves, protect others, and then participate in a manner that, I mean, there might be sections of society that know well more than I'm assuming so, since they're able to create these kinds of artistic, flared displays in New York. But I have no idea. Unbeknownst to me, I don't know where they are in the big wide world of the Rapagal. I don't know where their settlements are or their occupations are. I wouldn't know. So I put up only 4 because I have a shared memory with Nicholas doing a visual inspection of the Telefonica device in where I was being held during the day in some capture the moment or captivity that was known about in the century 19, decade 8, and then plus whatever years I was there. And then there was also, I believe, a phone call, whatever name was used, I'm unclear, but from the kitchen wall phone. And then I transferred the phone call to a different phone that I had which I think I referred to as Swatch, SWATCH. I had asked for like a jelly like phone. It was see-through that I saw on some advertisement. I wanted to look at the mechanics of the phone. I thought it was really interesting how they had a clear shell and they had all the innards that was able to see without touching, but just from, I thought it was an exotic piece that was interesting. I had asked Linda and Lou if I could have one for my room, but instead she wound up buying something called a Swatch phone, but the wrong version of Swatch. She didn't buy the jelly version, she bought something else. So again, it got confusing. And she wasn't the type of mother to. Sometimes she would take it back, but not in this particular time period. Star 1978, Star 8378, Nicole Cattaruzza. Its Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken. And I'm in Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.